If you want to use your left foot more in grooves like for timekeeping, or you want to just be able to create different unique sounds on the hats with your left foot, whether it's a chick or a splash or even a sizzle, really cool sound, then you're definitely in the right place today because we're going to talk about all of this. Today we're digging into the 3 secrets of successful left foot timekeeping and sound creation on the hats. And so we're talking about coordination and foot technique and hi-hat optimization, lots of good stuff that's really going to change your approach here. Ultimately, this is a great way to challenge your coordination and spice up your grooves and create a pulse over here with your left foot that can glue your grooves together. This is really cool, totally worth learning, so let's dig in. You can do this. I'm going to show you exactly how. Hey, while you're here, grab my free gift to you, the Know What to Practice 3-part daily practice routine e-guide. This guide is really cool because it breaks down the most essential areas of practice that every one of us needs to be doing regularly to make sure that you're not missing anything important, you're hitting all the key areas, and you're becoming a well-rounded, versatile drummer, reaching your full potential. A lot of drummers have downloaded this guide. It's the most popular one here on the channel, and people get results from it. It's great. If you're busy and you don't have a lot of time to practice, this helps because we're focusing on 30 minutes a day, 30-minute practice sessions. It's gonna help you gain confidence by knowing that you're making progress. It's gonna help you build coordination that'll help fix your weak hand and lead to better hand technique and more fluid time and better kit navigation, which leads to playing songs better and feeling better, more relaxed and at home at the kit. You'll even learn 5 really great tips for playing songs well musically. And most importantly, you'll get out of whatever rut you might be stuck in. You'll make sure that you're always making progress because you'll always know that next step. That's essential. You'll always know the next step so that you're continually growing in your skills. So definitely check that out in the description below, 3-part daily practice guide before you go. Let's dig into today's lesson. I'm gonna give it to you straight. The 3 secrets are ideal hi-hat stand cymbal adjustment. Very simple, some quick tips will get you squared away. Appropriate foot techniques for chicks versus splashes because they often require a different kind of foot technique that you're using. And then 3, a strategy in place for building left foot coordination. So number 3 is not exactly a quick tip, but when you know how to build your left foot coordination, that's an important part of this, and that's definitely one of the 3 secrets. So that's what we're breaking down today. There it is. Let's get rolling. Now, we're going to start off with something nice and controversial. So a lot of times whenever I talk about in a video hi-hat spacing, I'll always encourage people to have at least a 1-inch spacing between the hi-hats, maybe even 1.25 inches, and if you're crazy, 1.5 inches. It's going to be different. The distance is going to depend on which side we're talking because of bottom hat angle, which we'll talk more about in a minute. But a lot of times I get a lot of pushback when I talk about that because there are a lot of drummers who are trying to work with double bass and they want to be able to play an open hat sound with their stick without having to have their foot on the hi-hat stand. Now, that's okay, and it's fine if that's what works best for you, and so your default hi-hat looseness is like right here. That way, without a foot on there, you can get a nice open sound. But that's very limiting. I understand that you gotta make sacrifices if you're doing double bass, and you may even opt to have multiple hi-hat stands adjusted different ways. Maybe you've got hats on a remote stand. A lot of metal drummers do that. I'm not really in that world. I don't do a lot of double bass. I can fake my way through some double bass if I need to, but it's just not a style of, I've not been enough into metal, I guess, to really get deep into double bass. So I want to address that to say, if you're in that world, that's probably why you're going to disagree with some of what I'm going to say. But if you want to play chicks and splashes well, you have to do what I'm going to tell you to do today. So you've got to pick and choose where your priorities are going to be here. And yes, you do have to make sacrifices, logistical sacrifices, depending on what you're playing the most, what you're doing more of. For me, not being a heavy double bass player, I like to have my hats adjusted this way, this far apart. That way I can play better sounding chicks and splashes. Because what has to happen in order to play a firm chick, you've got to have enough distance here that you can get enough acceleration that they actually close firmly. Otherwise, we're like way down here. That's the loudest we can go. So you're not going to have good chick timekeeping if you've got them adjusted for this kind of open hat playing without a foot on there. If you're in that world, that's the compromise you've decided to make. But if you want to play chicks well, you've got to open them up more. And about the 1 inch, 1.25 inch spot is perfect. I mean, this is about 1.25 inches on this side. Now, bottom hat angle is also very important here because if both cymbals are perfectly parallel, you hardly get any sound when you close them, unless you've got those rippled kind of hats where you can kind of get away with that a little bit. But with normal hats, you end up with almost that airlock kind of thing where if they both are perfectly parallel, it just kind of not much sound. So make sure you've got your bottom hi-hat angle adjusted just enough. I don't know exactly what the angle is. You can figure it out. Sit there and play chicks while you've got your hand on that screw, adjusting that. Go a little tighter, keep playing, listen. Go a little leveler, keep listening, angle a little more, listen, and you'll find where that sweet spot is. Because if you angle too much, it's too much of like a slap, kind of sloppy sound. But if there's not enough angle, it's too quiet. So find your sweet spot. You can do it, just sit there and mess around with that screw while you're playing and while you're listening. This is what my sweet spot is, as closely as you can tell. There's not a lot of bottom hat angle. Basically, I like to have that screw that lifts the hi-hat to create that angle. I like to have that on the far side. I like for the bottom hi-hat cymbal to angle toward me. That way, when I close the hats, both hats actually become slightly tilted toward me. It just seems logical because we want cymbals tilted toward us, not away from us. And so that's my opinion on that. Some drummers like to go the other way. Doesn't really matter, not a big deal. Whatever makes sense to you. Now, as far as the foot technique goes, when you're playing chicks, you really have to put a lot of leg weight into that. Like if I just go, that's fine, and maybe that's the sound that we want, where it's a more softer, thicker kind of chick sound. But most of the time we want it to be a little more, especially if we're playing jazz. And most of the time we do want it to be very articulate, I guess you could say. And so if that's what we're doing, we've actually got to use our leg to push more weight into it so that it closes firmly. So what I'm doing is I'm playing heel up with my left foot. I've always been a heel down kick drum player. Most comfortable to me. It keeps me balanced. My right heel is basically my anchor, so I'm anchored here. Left leg just bounces like crazy. And that's actually how I keep time with my left foot. We'll talk about that a little more in a moment. But I'm actually playing heel up, and I'm basically bouncing my leg and pressing in with my big toe. It's really the big toe. At least, if it's not big toe, it's at least this part of my foot that's putting the pressure in. And you can see right there, going into splashes, that's where I'd rather lower my heel. So if I go heel down, then it's easier to just close and like tap. It's like tapping the cymbals together, letting them glance off each other, open right back up. Easiest to do that if you've got your heel down. So all you have to do is pivot your foot. Now, if you're playing a faster series of splashes, like if you wanted to keep quick time playing splashes, then you might want to lift your heel because of what I call the leg bounce. A lot of drummers do this. This isn't anything I came up with. I just call it this. I don't know if anybody else does. But the leg bounce is where you're just bouncing your leg to keep time while you're playing. A lot of drummers do this naturally. And once you've built up some left foot coordination, it makes a lot of sense to do this and can kind of help your timekeeping too. And so I'll be playing along. My left leg will just be bouncing over here. My heel is bouncing. I'm actually keeping my big toe in contact with the foot plate. My foot's going like this. And then as I want to increase the volume of the chicks, I'm just letting my foot, letting my big toe a little bit off the foot plate so that then my whole foot starts to bounce more. And so I can just do this, pivot from my big toe for almost no sound, or just silent timekeeping, and then allow my whole foot to come up a little more, big toe to come up a little more. And there's the chick timekeeping. By the way, don't sweat the splashing that happens between them. If you listen to old Led Zeppelin recordings, you hear Bonham doing this. You hear that same kind of sound going on. It just adds some character to it. Don't worry about the splashing between the chicks. It doesn't have to be pristine chickage here. And if you do want it to be that way, you just have to put your hand on it, like this. Even there, if you go fast, there's still some splashing. It's unavoidable. It's just a sound of the instrument, so don't worry about that. But, so what we're starting to talk about, if you want to do faster splashing, like You could do that heel down like I just did, but eventually you get to a certain tempo. It could still work, but you might find it easier to then lift up your heel and go like this. Because of how you can get into that motion of bouncing your leg. And if you're able to just keep your leg bouncing, then it becomes more natural to play them quickly, versus when heel's down, sometimes it's hard to get your foot to just pivot fast enough. So if you're not able to get fast enough with your left foot, just try going heel up. Or if you're going very slowly and you want it more controlled, then that's where heel down can make more sense. Now there's a third sound that I call sizzles. I think that's the pretty universal name for it, where we play a splash, but then instead of leaving the hats open after the splash, we go, where as soon as we splash, we gradually close them back, so then they're vibrating against each other, which I think is a more interesting sound. And in order to do that well, you definitely have to have a lot of angle. And definitely a lot of foot control. Heel down, I'm controlling exactly how far pressed down my foot is on the foot plate. I think those sound really cool in a lot of musical contexts. Also, an important note, I didn't mention this earlier, make sure your top cymbal is loose. Don't screw it down super tight. If you do that, you're not going to get good sounds, and you're especially not going to get a good sloshy or open hat sound. Make sure that things are loose and able to move here. There's no reason to clamp this tight. And honestly, some might argue it's bad for your cymbal. Anytime you've got something clamped tight, that means the cymbal can't absorb as much of the energy from the stick, which can put more stress on it, potentially result in cracking. That's why you never want to screw down felts super tight on your cymbals. I like going no felts. There's no reason to have them. So on your hi-hats, just keep it loose. Make sure that like it can freely swing. There's not much pressure at all from the felts. So if that can be loose, that's going to help a lot with the sizzling especially. Sizzles are going to sound really cool, and then sloshy stuff, open hat stuff is going to sound great too. It's going to be very smooth and very natural sounding. So just practice those foot motions. Practice sitting there and going like this, planting your big toe, bouncing your heel, and practice doing that in time with a groove, which leads us into the coordination exercises we'll get to in a moment. But practice just bouncing like that, and then gradually morphing into chicks. Soft at first and gradually getting louder. Practice doing splashes. Do it with your metronome. Start slowly, work on doing it steadily, and then practice doing quicker splashes like this. When you're doing that, by the way, you're suspending your heel in the air, and then you're pivoting your foot in order to play those notes. So your foot is just pivoting up and down. Not your whole leg. You don't want your whole leg moving, just your foot pivoting. And I think that makes sense if you're going very fast, but anything below very fast, I'd rather just keep my heel planted because I feel like I get better control over splashes that way. And remember, of course, the super important thing of have space between your cymbals. Without that space, none of this works. So if you're going to stubbornly refuse to open your hi-hats as much as I'm telling you to, you're going to struggle with this. I know you got to compromise and you got to make sacrifices. If you're trying to do the double bass thing, you're just going to have to adjust them on a per song basis. And so if there's a song where you want to do splashes or sizzles or strong chicks, you just got to quickly adjust them a little bit. It doesn't take long, it just takes a second. And then adjust them back to where you had them for your double bass playing. All right, so we went through those first secrets there. So optimization, adjustment here, and then foot technique. Practice the foot technique, make sure you got your optimization squared away. But now secret number 3, we've got to have a strategy in place for building left foot coordination. And we also want it to be fun. We don't want to get bogged down in building coordination. We want coordination to be a fun endeavor that's very fruitful and helps us play more musically. And so start out by pick some favorite songs. And so whether it's a favorite song that has like a tom part, or maybe you're playing over here on the ride, and there's room for left foot timekeeping. So find a groove you can play that allows the potential for left foot timekeeping. The simpler the groove, the better. We're just going to start with a super basic kick on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4 kind of groove. And we're just going to add in some different potential left foot timekeeping patterns. I'll show these to you. Notation is in the description below. You can go download the free PDF if you want to see this written out. That is the simplest, most practical way to incorporate the left foot into a groove. And those are patterns there that you can use in so many different songs. Whether or not you hear it on the record, it's something that you can use and you can add just because you want to. And it can often help glue grooves together. What I've always found is that if I'm playing a tom groove that's very sparse or maybe kind of random, like being able to keep just a steady quarter note over here is so helpful for the rest of the band, especially vocalists. Vocalists love the left foot hi-hat. I used to play a bunch with a worship leader who he was playing acoustic guitar, and he found it so helpful to crank up the hi-hat mic. There was a close mic on my hi-hat. And so he would crank that up in his mix, and he would look over and see that going on, and it helped him lock in. It's something visual because of the opening and closing, and it's something you can clearly hear. And so anytime you're playing something that might get a little syncopated or that might get a little sparse, or even if you're at a quiet part of a song and you just need to make sure the band's staying together and not rushing or dragging, a little bit of that goes a long way. So practice just a basic groove. Kick 1 and 3, snare 2 and 4, eighth notes on the ride, and practice doing left foot with the snare on 2 and 4, and then quarter notes, eighths, ands. Practice that step by step. Take it nice and slow. But you'll get that together more quickly than you think, because it's really not that hard. It's difficult for it to become autopilot. That's what takes some time. To get the autopilot left foot timekeeping, where you can play anything over here while keeping a pattern here, that does take some time. It takes a lot of repetitive. It takes a lot of repetitive repetition, a lot of repetition in your practicing, just logging the hours. The more you use this on gigs, the more you can try to use this on gigs, use it every day when you practice, the easier it gets. So push yourself to do that. Push yourself to do this and to make this a default thing that you do when you're playing basic grooves. Bounce your leg. When you've got your leg bouncing, like we talked about a minute ago, playing those eighth notes, it kind of becomes natural. All you're doing is you're just bouncing your leg. That can become autopilot. That can become autopilot because it's a motion. And even if you're playing quarter notes or ands, that same bounce can be happening. So just practice that. Spend some time. Spend some time getting to know your hi-hat, getting to know your left foot's capabilities. You can do this. Just be patient with it. And eventually you'll get to where the more you do this, the more you're able to start deviating from it and doing more syncopation over here while maintaining this. Here's another exercise that helps a lot with that. Practice playing paradiddles with your feet. It might sound ridiculous. It might sound really hard, but it's not that hard when you just sit there and you do it. By the way, make sure you can play paradiddles with your hands first. If you're a total beginner, brand new to this, practice going right, left, 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 just slowly with your hands, coordinating both sides of your brain to work together, and then just have your feet do it. Kick, hat, kick, hat, right, left, left, left. And then gradually get a little faster with it, knowing that as you get faster, you have to think about the techniques that you're using, and being able to do them more quickly. You'll start to hear some splashing up here when you're playing chicks. That's fine. But the more comfortable you can get with that, what happens is that forces your brain to be okay with the hi-hat happening in a random place. Boom, jump, boom, jump, boom, jump, jump. It's happening on all these different parts of the beat, different subdivisions, which helps a lot with eventually learning how to do where you can sit there and just like do crazy stuff with your left foot while you're playing a simple groove. Paradiddles with the feet helps with that. So what you can do, get going with the paradiddles very slowly, then add in eighth note timekeeping with the right hand. By the way, we're counting these as 16th notes. 1 E and 2 E and, so eighth notes with the right hand. Then add in a backbeat every 2 and 4. 1 E and 2 E and Remember that slowness, more important than speed for sure. The way that you build coordination, the way you teach your brain to process a lot of things at once, by doing them slowly. Slow playing, slow repetition leads to coordination, which then naturally leads to speed. So don't push against the speed wall. Don't try to get fast yet. Take pride and satisfaction and fulfillment in doing this very slowly, because when you do it slowly, know that that's how you're building those pathways. You're rewiring your brain, putting new things on autopilot, building new muscle memory. Then it starts to lock together. Then speed becomes easy. Speed becomes a given eventually. Be patient with it. Now, you can do a lot of different things here. You can also do different foot patterns. You can do an inverted paradiddle. You can do different forms of paradiddles. You could go down the first page of George Lawrence Stone's stick control and do all those random stickings with your feet while doing eighth notes with the right hand, backbeats with the left hand. And the sky's the limit with how far you can mix this up and turn this into crazy foot coordination exercises. So I'm not going to throw all that at you in this video, because all I want you to know, all you need to know right now is what is your first step. Quarter notes, eighth notes, ands, also just 2 and 4 with your left foot in the midst of a normal groove, because that's the most practical, fun, musical way to do this. Get that going first. Don't even worry about the paradiddle stuff first. Do that first thing. That was your first step. Second step is this, where you start working together with the paradiddles and bringing in the hands. Then from there, when that's coming together, then you can get crazy with it. But don't be in a hurry. Know that coordination starts with slow simplicity that you repeat over and over again. Use this stuff as often as you can every day when you practice. And once you can start using it on a gig, that's when it really starts to accelerate. When you're logging hours using your left foot, it gets so much easier. So I promise you, you're going to get it. You can do this. You just got to work at it. Be patient. So in light of all this talk about coordination, that's ultimately where we've landed here. That third secret is a big one, having a coordination plan. So you've got your first 2 steps here. But if you want to dig deeper into this, you really need to check out that guide I told you about earlier, the 3-part practice routine. This is my most popular e-guide. It's the one that gets most downloaded, and it's the one that I see my online students using the most, and it's got so much good stuff in it. It's loaded with coordination exercises, so you can do what we did today times 10. And so once you've done these first 2 steps today, I want you to dig into this guide. I want you to check out different ways you can build foot coordination and be able to build just all-around 4-way coordination in different contexts. There's a lot of different ways you can practice this stuff presented in the guides. You can literally pick and choose. You want to practice some rock stuff? Do you want to do some swing? Do you want to do some Latin? You want to do more rudimental kinds of patterns? There's a lot of options available. You can do these one at a time and just pick what you're most interested in. But they're all right there in the 3-part daily practice guide. The whole point of this guide is to help you reach your drumming dreams in the midst of a busy life, because in order to grow fast, you've got to know what to practice. And that's what this does. It gives you an overview of all the key areas that you need to always be focusing on, little bits of each consistently, so that you grow and become a well-rounded professional sounding drummer. And in doing this, you gain a lot of confidence because you know that you're doing things right and you're learning the skills that really matter. On top of that, you're fixing your weak hand. You're building precise, fluid time that translates to smooth navigation around the kit. And then you're learning the 5 biggest tips for listening well, playing musically. So that's kind of the icing on the cake, because we want to be musical drummers too. And we want that to be the ultimate motivation behind all of this technical stuff we do. If the music isn't inspiring your left foot chicks and splashes and left foot coordination and timekeeping, then how are you going to be motivated to practice this? So you got to have some songs in mind. You've got to have things that you're playing, that you're having fun just jamming out to. Again, even if the song doesn't have like left foot timekeeping audible to you as you're listening, still practice it. Play whatever song that has like a tom part in it or a ride groove, and just practice keeping time while you play it, whether or not the drummer on the record did that. Use that fun song that you love jamming out to as an opportunity to practice your left foot timekeeping in a fun way. And so by downloading that guide, you'll stop wasting time. You'll get out of whatever rut you might be stuck in. You'll be able to know that you're making progress session after session, day after day. So definitely go download that. It's helped thousands of drummers like you. I want you to be one of them. So I hope you got a lot out of today's lesson. I hope you're able to make some progress with your left foot and with your technique. I know I threw a lot at you today, but follow these steps, take action as best as you can. Those of you guys who take action consistently, you are the star students. You're the ones that get results from this. That's what we want. We want results. This isn't about you watching my videos and being like, oh, that's great. You know, Steven taught me something cool today. What good is that if you don't go try to do it? And so take action, go to your practice room, get to work on this. I got faith in you. I believe in you. You can do this. You can become the drummer you're meant to be. You've got the resources in your hands now. You've got everything in front of you. So you know what to do. So get to work. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't yet subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Become a fellow non-glamorous drummer. Thanks for watching. Stay non-glamorous, and I will see you on the next video.